Picture this for a moment. Your life today is a direct reflection of what you've chosen to learn or chosen not to learn. Every single result you're living right now, your income, your relationships, your health, your confidence, comes from the level of knowledge you've gathered and how much of it you've applied. The truth is, the gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't luck. It isn't talent. It's education. Not the kind of education you were forced to sit through in school, but the kind you deliberately feed yourself every single day. Think about if you stop feeding your body, you grow weak, you lose energy, and eventually you can't function. The same thing happens when you starve your mind. A mind left untrained, unfazed, unchallenged, it doesn't stay neutral, it deteriorates. It begins to settle, to accept average, to shrink instead of expand. Too many people live their whole life that way, reacting, repeating, reliving the same day over and over again because they never commit to learning beyond what's required. If you choose daily education, if you choose to invest in your mind the way you invest in your body, in your work, in your lifestyle, you ignite a fire that compounds with time. Every book, every podcast, every conversation with the right people, every lesson you apply, it becomes a brick in the foundation of the future you want to build. And when you make it a habit, when it's no longer optional but essential, you start to see how fast life can shift. This isn't about collecting information for the sake of it. This is about training yourself to think differently, to see opportunities others miss, to develop the discipline to act when most people freeze. Because if you can grow your mind daily, you can outgrow fear, outgrow excuses, outgrow the version of yourself that's been holding you back. So as we go through this, I want you to lean in, not just listen, but engage. Ask yourself with every word, how can I apply this to my life today? Because I promise you, if you stay with me until the end of this message, you'll walk away with a new standard for what it means to educate yourself daily. And when you apply it, never go back to who you were before. Your mind is the single greatest investment you'll ever own. It's more valuable than your house, your car, your career, even your bank account. Because the truth is, everything you experience, everything you achieve, everything you create in your life, it's filtered through the quality of your mind. Yet most people treat their mind like an afterthought. They'll spend hours scrolling, gossiping, complaining. Ask them how much time they spend deliberately strengthening their mind every day, and the answer is usually close to zero. And that's why they feel stuck. That's why they keep repeating the same cycles. That's why they look back at the last 5 years and realize nothing significant has changed. You've got to understand something. The mind is like a garden. If you don't plant the right seeds, weeds will take over by default. Negativity, fear, doubt, comparison, limitations, they don't need an invitation. They'll creep in naturally because the world is constantly feeding them to you. That's why so many people carry anxiety, stress, and frustration. Not because they're broken, because they've never taken control of what they're allowing to grow in their mental soil. Education is the seed. What you feed your mind every single day determines the kind of harvest you're going to reap in your life. I say your mind is your greatest asset. I don't mean that in some fluffy, motivational way. I mean it literally. Think about the wealthiest, most successful people in history. What separated them wasn't their background, their environment, even their resources. It was their ability to think differently. They invested in their minds when others invested in comfort. They built their mental muscle daily until they could see opportunities no one else could see. Born with it. They trained it, and so can you. But here's the trap. Most people think education ends after school. They think once they graduate, they've learned enough. Yet look around. Most people are working jobs they don't love, struggling financially, fighting battles in their relationships, and feeling empty inside. That's not because life is unfair. It's because they stopped educating themselves. They're running today's life on yesterday's knowledge. And let me tell you, outdated software won't run a powerful machine. If you want to thrive in this world, your education can't be seasonal, it can't be occasional. It has to be daily. Daily education doesn't mean you have to read an entire book in one night or spend hours buried in textbooks. It's about consistent feeding. Just like your body doesn't need one giant meal once a month, but daily nourishment. Your mind craves that same consistency. 20 minutes of a powerful book, one podcast with real insight, one course, one intentional conversation. That's all it takes to shift the way you think. And when you shift your thinking, you shift your decisions. You shift your decisions, you shift your results. But here's the catch. Your mind doesn't grow just because you hear information. It grows because you engage with it. It grows because you wrestle with it. You apply it. You make it real. If you read about leadership but never step up and lead, your mind hasn't grown. If you study communication but avoid the tough conversations, you've wasted that education. Your mind only becomes an asset when you use it. You take what you've learned and make it part of who you are. That's how you build confidence. That's how you create unshakable certainty. You've proved to yourself that what you feed your mind translates into real world power. Now think about the alternative. Think about what happens when you ignore your mind. You might survive, but you'll never thrive. You'll coast, but you'll never soar. You'll settle for what life gives you instead of demanding more from yourself. Deep down, you'll feel that hunger, that frustration, because you'll know you're capable of more, but you don't have the mental tools to unlock it. That pain doesn't come from lack of potential. It comes from lack of education. So here's the challenge. Every day, ask yourself, what am I feeding my mind? What am I exposing myself to? Am I surrounding myself with people who challenge me or people who drag me down? Am I watching things that build me up or things that distract me? Am I taking control of my mental diet, or am I letting the world shove junk food into my head? Because the quality of your life will never exceed the quality of your mind, and the quality of your mind will never exceed the quality of what you feed it. You truly understand that your mind is your greatest asset. You stop treating education as optional. You stop saying, I don't have time. And you start saying, I must. You stop scrolling for entertainment and you start searching for elevation. You stop comparing yourself to others and you start competing with who you were yesterday. Because at the end of the day, your mind will either be your prison or your passport. It will either hold you back with chains of fear, doubt, and limitation, or will propel you forward with vision, clarity, and power. The choice is yours, but the investment has to be daily. If you're serious about creating the life you know you're capable of, stop waiting for someone else to invest in you. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for the perfect time. Start today, feed your mind daily, strengthen it daily, educate it daily. Because once you realize your mind is your greatest asset, you'll never let a single day go by without giving it the fuel it deserves. And when you do, you'll look back and realize that was the turning point, the moment you stopped living by chance and started living by choice. Transformation doesn't happen in a single breakthrough moment. People like to believe in overnight success, some magical event where everything changes, but life doesn't work that way. True transformation is the result of small, consistent actions repeated daily until they compound into something extraordinary. That's why daily education is so powerful. It's not about reading one book and expecting your life to change. It's about feeding your mind day after day, stacking small wins on top of each other until the compound effect explodes in your favor. Think about this. If you commit just 30 minutes a day to learning, over a year that adds up to more than 180 hours of education. That's the equivalent of 4 or 5 full college courses. But this time it's self-directed. It's targeted at the areas of your life that actually matter to you, your finances, your health, your relationships, your mindset. And unlike formal education, this knowledge doesn't sit in a notebook or on a test paper. It integrates into your decisions, into your behavior, to the way you live. The mistake most people make is waiting for the big leap. They say, today I'll have time to sit down and study everything I need to know. But one day never comes. Life fills that space with distractions, responsibilities, and excuses. If you keep waiting for the perfect moment, you'll never grow, because growth doesn't come in giant leaps, it comes in daily steps. Every single day you commit to educating yourself, you're laying another brick. And those bricks, over time, build a foundation strong enough to carry any dream you choose. Let me ask you this, what's easier to lift, 100 pounds at once or 10 pounds every single day? The answer is obvious. The same principle applies to your mind, trying to transform your life with one massive pussy to burnout and frustration, feeding your mind daily, bit by bit. That's sustainable. That's how you build lasting strength. That's how you create transformation that sticks. Daily education also sharpens your awareness. Imagine walking through life with a dull blade. You can still cut through things, but it takes longer, it's sloppy, and you exhaust yourself in the process. Now imagine sharpening that blade every single day, even if only for 5 minutes. Over time, it becomes razor sharp, precise, effective. That's your mind when you commit to daily education. Suddenly, opportunities you used to overlook become obvious. Problems that once felt overwhelming now have solutions. Situations that used to intimidate you now feel manageable. You see more, you process more, you understand more, because you've been training daily. And here's the beauty of it, daily education compounds not just in knowledge, but in identity. The more consistently you learn, the more you start to see yourself as someone who grows. You begin to believe, I am the kind of person who invests in myself every day. That shift in identity changes everything, because your actions will always align with who you believe you are. If you believe you're average, you'll live average. If you believe you're evolving, you'll make choices that support growth. Daily education doesn't just feed your mind, it reshapes the way you see yourself. And once your identity shifts, your entire future shifts with it. Now, some people might say, but I don't have time. Let's get real. You do have time. You have time to scroll, time to binge, time to complain, time to procrastinate. It's not about time, it's about priority. If you don't prioritize daily education, you're choosing to stay where you are. But when you make it a non-negotiable habit, something shifts. You begin to use those in between moments. While you're driving, while you're walking, you're waiting not to kill time, but to build yourself. Those minutes add up. Those minutes become hours. And those hours compound into expertise, wisdom, and power. The fascinating thing is, daily education doesn't just transform your life. It transforms the lives of everyone around you. When you grow, your family benefits. When you grow, your team benefits. When you grow, your community benefits. Because the more you know, you can give. The more tools you have, the more problems you can solve. The more perspective you gain, the more value you bring into every room you walk into. Transformation isn't selfish, it's contagious. Don't make the mistake of thinking daily education is just about facts and strategies. It's also about emotional growth. It's about training yourself to handle pressure, to stay calm when life hits hard, to manage your energy, your emotions, your focus. Every day you educate yourself on how to master your inner world, You gain the power to lead your outer world. That's the real transformation, because no matter what life throws at you, if you've built the habit of daily growth, you can adapt, you can pivot, you can overcome. Let's be honest. Most people won't do this. Most people will nod their head, agree that daily education is important, and then go right back to old patterns. Why? Because it feels easier in the short term to do nothing. The cost of doing nothing is your future. The cost of ignoring daily growth is regret. And regret is the heaviest weight you'll ever carry. You don't want to look back 10 years from now and think, only I'd committed to growing a little bit every day. Where would I be now? Daily education is your insurance policy against regret. It's your guarantee that you'll keep moving forward even if progress feels slow. Because slow progress is still progress, and when compounded over years, it leads to breakthroughs that seem impossible to the outside world. People will look at you and think you changed overnight. They'll think you're lucky, gifted, chosen. You'll know the truth. It wasn't overnight. It was every night, every morning, every day that you chose to feed your mind. So don't underestimate the power of small, consistent learning. Don't overlook the compound effect. Don't think for a second that one page, one idea, one lesson isn't worth it, because that one lesson could change a decision you make tomorrow. That one idea could open the door to a new opportunity. That one insight could alter the course of your life. Transformation doesn't wait for you to be ready. It rewards you when you're consistent. Every day you educate yourself. You're not just adding knowledge, you're transforming slowly, quietly, consistently, till one day you wake up and realize you're no longer the same person. And that's the magic of daily education. It doesn't just change what you know, it changes who you are. And when you change who you are, you change what's possible for the rest of your life. There's a dangerous lie that people love to believe, and it goes like this: knowledge is power. It sounds good. It feels good. It makes you think that just by reading a book or listening to a podcast, you've already leveled up. But that's not true. Knowledge by itself is nothing more than potential. It's like fuel sitting in a tank. Until you ignite it, it doesn't move the car. Power only comes when you act on what you know, when you take what you've learned and put it into motion. Otherwise, you're just filling your mind with information that collects dust. Think about how many times you've learned something, nodded your head, felt inspired in the moment, and then did nothing with it. That's what most people do. They become professional consumers of information. They binge courses, pile up self-help books, fill notebooks with ideas, and convince themselves they're making progress. But here's the truth. If your life isn't changing, if your results aren't improving, if your behavior isn't different, then you haven't learned. You've just memorized. Real learning is proven through action, through execution, through applying what you know when it matters most. You see, the gap between knowing and doing is the graveyard where most dreams are buried. Everyone knows they should eat healthier, but not everyone does. Everyone knows they should save money, but not everyone does. Everyone knows they should work on their goals daily, but not everyone does. It's not the lack of knowledge that keeps people stuck. It's the lack of action. And this is where daily education has to evolve. It's not just about feeding your mind with new ideas. It's about turning those ideas into habits, into behaviors, into results. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone reads a book on communication. They highlight every line, take detailed notes, and feel energized by all the new strategies. But the next time they're in a conflict, they fall back into old patterns, they raise their voice, they shut down, they avoid the issue. Did they really learn, or did they just consume? Until they practice pausing in the heat of the moment, until they apply the techniques under pressure, the knowledge means nothing. Application is the bridge that turns information into transformation. And here's the catch: applying what you learn is uncomfortable. That's why most people don't do it. It's easy to sit in a chair and feel enlightened by someone else's wisdom. It's hard to stand up, face your fears, and put that wisdom to the test. Application requires courage. It requires vulnerability. It requires failing, adjusting, trying again. That's why only a small percentage of people ever experience real growth. They're the ones willing to feel the discomfort of action instead of hiding in the comfort of theory. But once you make action your standard, everything changes. Suddenly, every book you read, every seminar you attend, every conversation you have becomes a catalyst for growth. Because you're not just collecting ideas, you're experimenting with them in real time. You're testing, refining, adapting. In that process, you develop mastery. Mastery doesn't come from reading about something once. It comes from applying it again and again until it becomes part of who you are. Think about athletes. They don't just watch game footage and call it practice. They drill, they execute, they repeat the same move thousands of times until it becomes automatic. That's why they dominate when the pressure is on. They've trained their body to respond through application. Your mind works the same way. You can watch motivational videos all day long, but until you practice discipline, until you practice focus, till you practice resilience in real situations, you're just a spectator of your own potential. And here's what's exciting. Every time you act on new knowledge, you reinforce the belief that you can change. You build momentum. You start to trust yourself, because confidence doesn't come from knowing, it comes from doing. You can study success strategies for years, but if you never put them into play, you'll always doubt yourself. The moment you take action, in imperfect action, you prove to yourself that you're capable. And once you have that proof, no one can take it away from you. The world doesn't reward what you know. It rewards what you do with what you know. People don't get hired, promoted, admired because they memorized theories. They get those results because they applied skills. Leaders aren't remembered for the knowledge they stored. They're remembered for the decisions they made, the risks they took, the actions they executed. Your life is not a reflection of what you've learned. It's a reflection of what you applied. So here's the shift you need to make. Stop asking yourself, what do I know? And start asking, what have I done with what I know? Stop measuring progress by how many books you've read or how many courses you've completed. Measure progress by how much your actions have changed. Measure it by how different your choices look today compared to last year. Because knowledge without action creates the illusion of progress, but action creates the reality of progress. Daily education is only powerful if you transform it into daily execution. If you learn something in the morning, find a way to apply it by the evening. Don't wait until it's perfect, wait until you feel ready, because waiting is just another form of procrastination. Implement now, refine later. That's how growth works. The faster you turn information into action, the faster your life changes. Don't be afraid of failing in the process. Failure isn't proof that you're weak, it's proof that you're applying. Every failure is a lesson you couldn't get from a book. Every mistake is feedback that sharpens your approach. The people who win big in life aren't the ones who know the most. They're the ones who act the most, who try the most, who fail the most, and who learn the fastest. So remember, this education without application is entertainment. It might feel good in the moment, but it doesn't move your life forward. If you want true power, you've got to turn learning into living. You've got to close the gap between what you know and what you do. Because when you make that shift, you refuse to just consume and instead commit to applying, you unlock the kind of transformation most people will never experience. And that's when your education becomes unstoppable. Your environment is educating you every single day, whether you realize it or not. It's not just the books you read or the lessons you study. It's the voices you listen to, the energy of the people around you, the media you consume, and the habits of those you spend the most time with. You're constantly absorbing, constantly programming your mind through your environment. And the truth is, your environment will either pull you higher or it will drag you down. It will either stretch you into your potential or shrink you into mediocrity. That's why taking control of your environment is one of the most critical choices you'll ever make. Think about this for a moment. If you plant the healthiest seed in toxic soil, will it grow? No matter how much potential is inside that seed, the environment kills it. But if you take an ordinary seed and put it in rich, fertile soil, water it, expose it to sunlight, it flourishes. People are no different. You might have all the potential in the world, but if you're surrounded by negativity, laziness, and small thinking, you'll wither. On the other hand, even if you're not the most talented or the most experienced, when you surround yourself with ambition, encouragement, and growth, you'll thrive. Look around at the 5 people you spend the most time with. Their attitudes, their standards, their habits are rubbing off on you, whether you want them to or not. If they settle, you'll start to settle. If they complain, you'll start to complain. If they make excuses, you'll find yourself making excuses too. But if they push themselves, you'll feel compelled to push yourself. If they're hungry for growth, you'll start to crave growth. If they live with discipline, you'll feel that energy pulling you to live at a higher level. You become like the environment you're immersed in. It's not just people though, your environment is also shaped by what you allow into your mind every day. If you wake up and feed your brain with fear-driven news, gossip, and mindless scrolling, you're programming yourself with worry, distraction, and comparison. And you might wonder why you feel anxious, unmotivated, or drained. It's not a mystery you've been feeding your mind junk, but when you deliberately feed it with empowering books, uplifting conversations, powerful podcasts, and positive content, suddenly your thoughts shift. You feel energized, focused, creative. The environment you choose shapes the way you think, and the way you think shapes the way you live. Now, some people hear this and resist. They say, but I can't just cut people out of my life. I can't control everything around me, and that's true. You can't always choose your family, your coworkers, or your circumstances, but you can choose what you allow to influence you. You can choose how much time you spend in draining environments and how much time you spend in empowering ones. You can choose who gets your ear, who gets your energy, and who doesn't. You can create boundaries, and you can deliberately design spaces that elevate you instead of weaken you. Even small changes can shift everything. Maybe it's replacing 30 minutes of social media with 30 minutes of reading. Maybe it's joining a group of people who share the same vision for growth. Maybe it's listening to something uplifting on your commute instead of letting the radio fill your head with noise. Maybe it's spending less time with people who constantly bring you down and more time with people who hold you accountable to rise higher. Every small shift in your environment compounds, just like daily education compounds, and over time, the difference becomes massive. Here's the hard truth. If you try to grow in an environment that resists growth, you will always feel like you're swimming against the current. You'll feel drained, frustrated, maybe even question whether growth is worth it. But when you change the current, when you step into an environment where growth is normal, discipline is expected, and success is celebrated, you don't have to fight so hard. The current carries you forward. It becomes easier to win because the environment is aligned with your vision instead of fighting against it. So ask yourself, kind of environment are you living in right now? Are the people around you inspiring you or suffocating you? Are you filling your mind with fuel or with poison? Are your daily spaces designed for focus and growth? Are they filled with distraction and clutter? Be honest with yourself, because your environment isn't neutral. It's shaping you every second, pushing you toward a future of expansion or a future of limitation. Don't underestimate the power of creating your own micro environment, even if the larger one isn't ideal. Maybe your workplace is negative, but your morning routine can be positive. Maybe your family doesn't support your growth. You can build an online community that does. Maybe your current friends are comfortable staying where they are, but you can still find mentors, coaches, or role models who pull you higher. You don't have to be trapped by your environment. You can build one piece by piece that supports who you're becoming. The moment you decide to intentionally design your environment, you stop being a victim of influence and you start becoming a creator of influence. You take back control, and that control is everything, because once your environment supports your growth, daily education no longer feels like a struggle. It feels natural. You want to grow. You want to take action, because the people and spaces around you make it feel normal, expected, inevitable. So don't underestimate this. Your environment is silently educating you every single day. It's teaching you what's acceptable, what's possible, what's normal. If you want a bigger life, put yourself in an environment that makes growth your new normal. Because when you shift your environment, shift your future, there's a massive misconception that keeps millions of people stuck. And it's the belief that education ends once school is over. You go through years of classes, exams, and grades, and somewhere along the way, conditioned to think that learning is something you do because you have to. You learn what's required, you pass the test, and then you move on. And for many people, that's where education stops. Here's the truth. Formal education may help you make a living, but self-education is what allows you to create a life. Think about the most important areas that shape the quality of your life. Your health, your finances, your relationships, your mindset, your emotional resilience. How much of that did traditional schooling actually teach you? For most, the answer is little to none. You were taught formulas, dates, and theories. You weren't taught how to manage your emotions when life falls apart. You weren't taught how to build wealth, how to communicate effectively, how to maintain energy, how to cultivate confidence, how to lead yourself, let alone others. Yet these are the exact skills that determine whether your life is extraordinary or average. This is why self-education is non-negotiable. It's the difference between surviving and thriving. It's the difference between living by default and living by design. If you rely only on what school gave you, you're operating with a limited toolkit, and in a world that changes as fast as this one, that's not enough. The game is moving too quickly. Technology, business, opportunities, challenges. They're evolving daily. If you're not educating yourself daily outside of what was handed to you, you're falling behind, and you may not even realize it until it's too late. But here's the beauty. Most valuable education is not locked away in some institution. It's available to anyone willing to seek it out. Every book, every seminar, every mentor, every podcast, every piece of wisdom that's been documented, it's accessible. Live in a time where the tools to completely transform your life are right in your pocket. You don't have to wait for someone to assign you a lesson. You don't have to wait for permission. You can decide right now to educate yourself on the things that actually matter for the life you want to create. When you start self-educating, you realize something powerful. You're not limited to one subject, one degree, or one path. You can design your learning around the life you want to live. If you want to build wealth, you can study personal finance, investing, entrepreneurship. If you want to transform your health, you can study nutrition, exercise science, psychology of habits. If you want deeper relationships, you can learn about emotional intelligence, communication, human behavior. The knowledge exists. The question is whether you'll commit to learning it. Now, here's where most people get stuck. They tell themselves, I already know enough. And that belief keeps them trapped in cycles of struggle. They wonder why they can't get ahead financially, why their health declines. Their relationships feel unfulfilling. And it's because they're trying to solve new problems with outdated tools. Imagine trying to navigate today's world with a map from 50 years ago. You'd get lost. The same happens in life. If you're not updating your education, your map is outdated, and you end up wandering in circles, never reaching the places you could go. Self-education forces you to evolve. It forces you to confront what you don't know, to stretch into new skills, to rewire old beliefs. It keeps you relevant, adaptable, prepared, and it gives you a massive advantage because while most people are coasting on what they learned years ago, you're upgrading daily. You're building a library inside your mind that equips you for anything life throws at you. But let's be clear, self-education isn't just about gathering information. It's about transformation. It's not enough to read about health if you're still ignoring your body. It's not enough to study relationships if you're still avoiding difficult conversations. It's not enough to learn about money if you're still spending recklessly. Self-education becomes powerful only when you apply it. And when you do, it changes everything. There's also another dimension. Self-education isn't only about external subjects. It's about knowing yourself. Most people have a deeper understanding of their favorite TV shows than they do of their own mind. They've studied characters on a screen more than they've studied their own fears, patterns, and strengths. When you start educating yourself about you, about what drives you, what limits you, what habits control you, you gain a level of awareness that changes the game. Because once you know yourself, you can lead yourself. And once you can lead yourself, you can lead others, and your influence multiplies. And here's what's exciting. When you commit to self-education, you're not just building knowledge, you're building freedom. You're no longer dependent on someone else to teach you, to guide you, to hand you opportunities. You become resourceful. You become the kind of person who can adapt, create, and thrive in any situation. That's freedom. When the world changes, and it will, you won't be afraid because you've trained yourself to keep learning, to keep growing, to keep evolving. Here's the challenge. You have to shift your mindset from education as a phase to education as a lifestyle. This isn't something you do once in a while. This isn't something you stop when you hit a certain age. The moment you stop learning is the moment you start dying. The greatest leaders, the most successful entrepreneurs, the most fulfilled individuals are all lifelong students. They never arrive. They never settle. They know that self-education is the fuel that keeps their fire alive. So ask yourself, are you educating yourself daily in the areas that truly matter? Are you learning about health, wealth, relationships, mindset, leadership? Are you coasting on what school taught you years ago? Be honest with yourself, because your results will always expose the truth. If your finances are a mess, it's not because money is complicated. It's because you haven't educated yourself on how to master it. If your relationships feel shallow, it's not because love is impossible. It's because you haven't educated yourself on how to nurture it. If your health is failing, it's not because your body betrayed you. It's because you haven't educated yourself on how to sustain it. The moment you embrace self-education as a daily practice, you step into a new level of power. You stop being at the mercy of what you were taught and start creating what you want to be taught. You stop living in reaction to life and start designing life on your terms. Because in the end, most valuable education isn't the one someone else gave you. It's the one you choose to give yourself. Most people underestimate the compound effect of small, consistent actions. They look for the big breakthroughs, the massive moments of change, lightning strike that's going to suddenly transform their life. But life doesn't work that way. Transformation is rarely about one big moment. It's about the accumulation of tiny, daily choices that compound over time. Education works the same way. It's not about cramming information once in a while. It's about developing a rhythm of daily learning that gradually reshapes how you think, how you see the world, and ultimately how you live. Think about this. If you dedicate just 15 minutes a day to reading, studying, or learning something new, by the end of a year, you'll have invested over 90 hours into your personal growth. 90 hours, that's more than 2 full work weeks spent on nothing but elevating yourself. Imagine what that could do to your confidence, your skills, your opportunities. Now multiply that by 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Do you see what happens? The gap between you and the person who isn't learning widens into an unbridgeable distance. You become more capable, more adaptable, more valuable because you built this invisible but unstoppable force of momentum. Most people don't commit because they think daily learning has to be complicated or overwhelming. They picture sitting down with giant textbooks or taking endless courses, and they convince themselves they don't have time. But that's just an excuse. Daily learning can be as simple as listening to an audiobook on your commute, watching a powerful lecture instead of scrolling aimlessly, journaling about what you learned from your mistakes, having a meaningful conversation with someone who challenges your perspective. It's not about the format, it's about the consistency. The power comes not from doing it perfectly, but from showing up every day to feed your mind and grow. You make daily learning a priority, something shifts inside you. You start to live with a heightened level of awareness. You begin to notice opportunities you would have overlooked before. You make connections between ideas that others miss. You see patterns in life, in business, in people, because your mind is constantly expanding. It's like sharpening a blade. A dull blade struggles to cut no matter how hard you push, but a sharp blade slices effortlessly. Daily education keeps your mind sharp, and when life puts challenges in front of you, you cut through them with clarity instead of wrestling in confusion. And here's the key. You can't just consume information, you have to embody it. Every piece of wisdom you learn should be applied, tested, lived out. Otherwise, it becomes intellectual entertainment. The true transformation happens when what you learn changes what you do. When you read about discipline and then wake up earlier tomorrow. You study about emotional intelligence and then apply it in a difficult conversation. When you learn about health and then put the knowledge into practice by taking care of your body, this is where daily learning becomes daily living. That's when your entire reality begins to shift. The other piece people often miss is reflection. Daily education is not only about adding more, it's also about pausing to integrate what you've already learned. Take time to ask yourself, did I learn today? How does it apply to my goals? How can I use this tomorrow? Without reflection, knowledge slips through your fingers. But with reflection, knowledge sticks, grows roots, and becomes wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge applied consistently over time, and wisdom is what guides you when life throws you curveballs that no book could have specifically prepared you for. There's also something deeply fulfilling about becoming a lifelong learner. It brings meaning and energy to your days. Instead of just drifting through the routines of work, bills, and obligations, you wake up with a sense of curiosity. You start asking bigger questions, exploring new ideas, challenging your assumptions. You become excited about your own growth. And when you're excited about your own growth, you inspire everyone around you to grow too. People feel your energy, they notice your progress, and it gives them permission to start their own journey. Here's the challenge. You have to protect your learning time like it's sacred. The world will always try to steal it from you. Your phone, your job, your responsibilities, distractions. They'll all compete for your attention. If you don't set the standard, you'll end up giving your best energy to everything except your own growth. So decide right now how much time will you dedicate daily to your education. It doesn't have to be hours. Start with minutes, make them non-negotiable, build that muscle. Once it's a habit, it will grow naturally because you'll begin to crave it. You'll realize how powerful it feels to feed your mind every day, and you won't want to stop. Let me remind you, daily learning isn't a sprint. It's a marathon. You're not going to see dramatic results in a week, but keep at it for months and then years, and one day you'll look back and realize how far you've come. You'll realize that the confidence you carry, the wisdom you share, the success you've built, the quality of life you enjoy, it all traces back to the small decision you made to learn every day. That decision compounds into a legacy, because not only does your daily education transform your life, it ripples outward into your family, your business, your community. The truth is, you will never regret learning. You will never look back and wish you'd spent less time growing. You might look back with regret if you let years pass without feeding your mind, without elevating your skills, without unlocking your potential. And the cost of not learning daily is far greater than the effort it takes to do it. You either pay the price of discipline now or you pay the price of regret later. So if you truly want to create a life of growth, fulfillment, and impact, commit to educating yourself daily. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait for permission. Wait for circumstances to align. Start today, learn something, apply it, reflect on it, do it again tomorrow. Let it become who you are. Because the moment daily education becomes your lifestyle is the moment your potential becomes unstoppable.